Intertextual Cardboard Experience.
Hello and welcome to Intertextual Cardboard Experience. So excited for today's terrific guest taking the show into the teens. Some intentional alliteration there with Eric from the Board Game Dojo YouTube channel and podcast. How are you doing today, Eric?
You know what? I'm pretty good. I have to say that, I feel bad for your audience because they're probably excited. They're like, oh man, we've gotten Dan Thoreau, we've gotten John Perry. Who's going to be next? And then they go into the feed. They're like, who's this guy?
Oh,
This one, I'm feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, but my goal is to at least say one interesting thing in the duration of our episode today.
well, I don't think that like justification or thought is justified at all. I think there's going to be many very interesting thoughts coming from you, and a lot of it is just like based on the work that you're doing. So one of the I'm excited for any episode, but I'm really excited for this because uh, this is what I'm deeming the first crossover episode. So towards the end of last year, 2023, you reached out to me about a couple of end of year episodes that you were doing, where you included some guests from different board game media, podcasts, YouTube channels, and everything like that to reflect on a couple of year end type of topics. So today we're going to be talking about crossovers and community, and then I have I have a structural intent where I'm thinking about like transitions and segues from one topic to the next. They might be stupid, but it's always got to be something, right?
That's part of any good podcast episode is terrible segues.
Okay, good. Well, I I'm not like cornering the market, but I will say that I can stand out amongst the best in terrible segues.
I don't know. This sounds like the competition is on.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess if you want to like take on that challenge, if you want to, we'll battle. It'll be a meta game to a gaming podcast.
Speaking of podcast, I'm on one.
Oh, that's deep. Oh, oh my, good stuff already. So hey, look at that. You already got me right out of the gate. So, before talking about like your channel, what got you into board games and everything like that, I just kind of want to ask you about you. I'm a Midwesterner. You are a fellow Midwesterner, as I've learned, but you've moved around just a little bit. So I just kind of want to know a little bit more about that, like you and everywhere you've been, and kind of the experiences, not necessarily even board game related, that have kind of like come from that. Just enlightening me and everybody too.
Sure. Yeah, so kind of like specific Jiko Shokai, as we say in Japanese, like your self-introduction. Um, I actually was not planning on moving to Japan, like whatsoever. I did my study abroad for my undergrad, which was in psychology. And I was studying under a depression expert in Ireland. And there was just like a mess up in the registrar while I was in Ireland in my college in the US that the classes that I was supposed to be signed up for to graduate, they didn't sign me up for and they were now full. So they were like, all right, well, we have a Japanese history class that you could take and it fulfills your requirement. What do you say? It's the only class that fits in your schedule. I'm like, well, I want to graduate, so I'm going to take that. And I liked it so much that I ended up minoring in it. And I ended up being the TA for the class. This was around the time when I started getting really interested in teaching as well. So, high fives for teachers across the Zoom call that we're on. And so that's what I decided to do. I was recommended by the professor to go and teach in his home country of Japan. And so that was kind of actually how I got to Japan in the first place. I was on the JET program. If people listening might know that one, it's a pretty popular way to go teach English in Japan. I did that for a couple of years, went freelance after that, and yeah, because I fell in love both in the country and with my wife. One of those, there's a couple of sayings that I'm not going to repeat on the podcast about foreigners who end up staying longer than they expected because they fell in love over there. So that's kind of my story. But also, I mean, that was also the time when I got back into board gaming, was while I was in Japan, actually. So a lot of my familiarity with board games is actually a lot different than what people are used to, because it is very, very expensive to get games from the West in Japan. So I actually learned a lot of them a lot later, and kind of a lot of my gateway games were Japanese games. And now I'm in France for a little while.
Cool. And then how long have you been in France? Because yeah, I know that when we were coordinating and something to get in the future, seeing your little board game arena flag, it was not a Japanese flag. Instead it was a French one. So
Yeah, we've been here for a half a year. We're on 1 year visas. So my wife is trying to become a trilingual translator between English, French, and Japanese. So I'm here working and she's studying hard. Actually, that's what she's doing in the bedroom over there while we're recording over here. Gambatte.
that's awesome. I think I mentioned it in a previous episode when I was talking to Peter Roostermeyer, the designer of Paleo, and just people that know multiple languages. And I'm sure, honestly, I know for certain that there's been multiple people on the show that know more than just English, but I have a very rudimentary understanding of Spanish, and very, even that is like super dusty. But like learning multiple languages, I just think is super. I don't know if it's one of those things that I like put it on my I want to do more of. So being able to like not just do it, but do it in a way that you can teach other people multiple languages too. Like that's like a skill on top of a skill already.
Oh, definitely. I tell all of my students that I'm just like, you're probably better at English than I am because I am terrible in multiple languages. So that's cool.
Hey, probably probably better than me. Well, definitely better than me in the foreign ones. Well, English, well, who knows?
How's
If
my
you hear,
marketing pitch as an English teacher? Do you want to hire me?
uh, hey, honestly, I think it's all about the intent, the passion. If you want to do it, go for it. Teaching English is something else.
Yeah, you would know.
I would. Cool. Okay, so kind of diving a little bit more, like there's plenty that could be unpacked, but you mentioned that like when you moved to Japan is when you started kind of getting interested into board games, and you said that experience was a little bit different. So and that kind of getting some of the the Western games was a little bit more challenging. Initially, obviously, getting like introduced to them more and more over the course of the years. But I guess what were some of the games then that you were playing that kind of like really hooked you when you first started getting back, that you're perhaps are ones that are a little bit outside of the ones that are maybe canon entry points or something like that, that you're like, wow, I like board games again, or I like these situations that I'm in.
Ooh. That is a good question. And I think it has mostly to do with the fact that I was kind of in a new country, studying a new language. Like I actually moved to Japan not knowing a single word of Japanese, which I give a 0 out of 5 on Yelp. Do not recommend that strategy. So I was trying to find ways to actually like get to know people and kind of use like a little bit of the Japanese that I've learned, and but still talk to people who knew a little bit of English. And one of the best places to do that was actually at board game meetups that were specifically tailored for expats who were trying to study Japanese and for Japanese people who were trying to practice their English. And so a lot of the games that we played required some kind of communication. So it was games that actually I think people in the Western world know, but maybe aren't the ones you think of how to get into board games. So, for example, Time Bomb, which is a social deduction game in which literally you're just like everybody has cards around the table, and some of them are bombs and some of them are wires. And you need to, and there is a set of like pliers on the table, and people are going to bluff you whether or not, based on their team, like, oh no, I'm safe. If you cut my, like, you're just going to cut wire, which is good. We're all the good guys here. Cut mine. But, some of you are actually wanting them to cut your cards because your cards are the bomb and you want the bomb to go off. It's been remade by Yellow in a couple different editions, but that was one of the games. And of course, you also have games like Love Letter. You have the original version of Coup. And I think that those were really the ones that got me kind of back into it, were really the party games more than anything, because I remembered how fun it was to be social with people and kind of use this set of rules to, okay, maybe I'm a little bit nervous talking to people normally, but when I'm playing in a set of rules and I need to kind of at least role play something out at the table, it allows me to kind of come out of my shell a little bit. And that's kind of remained a reason why I love board gaming so much and why I haven't gotten as into solo gaming as a lot of other people are. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, I don't, because board gaming to me is a chance to be social. Are you kind of the same way? You see board games as a kind of social dynamic thing, or are you more solo? Do you do a little bit of both?
Okay, well, that's a good follow-up question, but kind of like, reflecting on your experience, and that's a really, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, that idea of using, well, first off, like having like two different groups trying to like learn each other's like language and meeting up in that setting is really cool. I mean, I guess I hadn't really even like thought about that much, but the games that and the types of games that you are mentioning, having them be more social and then having that kind of be like a part of like your gaming like identity now too, like I mentioned, does make a lot of sense. For me, I I think like I've always liked games. Um, yeah, I mean, I grew up playing like a lot of the typical games that kids play, and then one of the things that I did, probably honestly, like say, let's just make up a number, let's say 9 and beyond, and did when I was whenever I was home for like a super long time, was I played a ton of cribbage with my dad. So I've never logged a game of cribbage on Board Game Geek, but I can't imagine that there's a game that I've played that comes close to the numbers that I initially logged there. But a video gamer as well, and then I think just kind of like I had probably a more stereotypical or kind of general entry. Like I think in high school I played a little bit of Catan, so maybe like a little bit earlier than some people were. But I played Sheep's Head too. That was kind of like my intro into trick taking. So I was kind of always playing, but still kind of like on the outskirts of like the hobby. I'll always throw that in quotes. And once I started like falling into it more, I think I just kind of wanted to be able to do it as much as I can. So there is like that social element that I do really like. So if I'm playing games with more than, well, myself, because I do play a decent amount of solo games, like I really like them to have that interactivity, whether that is more of like a social party style game or even one that's more of like a strategic affair. Like I like, because I think I do a lot of that solo stuff, I would prefer to like have my gaming experience get like right in each other's face. Whether that's mean or not, I guess it doesn't really matter, but
No,
that's
yeah,
me.
like I'm making a conscious effort not to play a solo game today, so let's do something that differentiates it from when I'm just playing by myself.
Hmm. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of like the way I approach games. But I mean, end of the day, if anybody wants to to play a game in any capacity, even if it's not like the most interactive, like I'll play. It's just all about, not all about games, but I like them a lot. I like the puzzles. I like the interactions. I like whatever it is that they can bring.
Cool.
Cool. Okay. Let's, I'd say, oh, okay. I do have a follow-up question. I kind of skipped it. So we talked about like you a little bit, talked about how your travels did help kind of like re-get you back into board gaming. So I guess what point then did you start thinking about that and your media, your YouTube channel, your podcast, the things that you make?
Oh, good question. I think it started when I first got an established game group in Japan, because there was a group of us who really liked to explore a combination of known entities and unknown games as well. And I'm sorry if people are coming over from my podcast because I've talked about this a couple times, so I'm gonna say it again. But in all honesty, it kind of started partly out of a happy or positive reason and partly out of irritation, because we were happy because people were getting a little bit more interested in the Japanese gaming scene, which I still think is a little bit under the radar, even though you've had big hits internationally like Trio, which was originally Nana, or Scout. But we were excited to be like, okay, hey, people are interested in this. Let's show what the Japanese gaming scene is all about. But it was also partly out of irritation because our group was also listening to kind of a variety of different board game media. And they would often kind of talk about Japanese games kind of in a way that made them sound unserious. And what I mean by that is they'd be like, oh, this game isn't very good, like mechanically, but ha ha ha, it's just kind of a silly game to be expected out of Japan. So we'll give this a 6 or 7 out of 10 because, it's a Japanese game. So, we kind of expect them not to be as good mechanically. And it's kind of like, really? Like, I don't know if that's really a fair evaluation of that. And so now, even, we just finished our first full year as a YouTube channel and a podcast, but we're constantly kind of in and out and giving each other opinions as to what we think of different games coming out of Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, and all of these different areas, and kind of trying to make it so that we are giving them their due of like, okay, you know what? There are some great games, but there's also a lot of really bad ones, just like anywhere else in the world. And by giving that seriousness to it, then it helps, I hope, give designers a chance to really have their really good work stand out.
That's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned having that message exist on your show to a degree, and that's when I was like when you reached out and I listened to the episodes that you had like all those reflections on, but you did your personal reflecting, and a lot of it was kind of like a look back on that first year and like your goals and how they're going and like what you want to do to keep at it and like kind of even tinker with that. And I'm all about that. Like I'm all about like the vision, and I'm all about like seeing what it is that you can like continue to do and just like try different things in a unique way. And honestly, well, that's a hair forward thinking, and maybe we'll see when we get there too. But yeah, I I like that. I like that a lot. So
Do I like smell a hint of foreshadowing from the English teacher over there?
foreshadowing, where we've had alliteration exist, foreshadowing. I don't even trying to even think like what level of English I'd be at. I don't know. I think like that's like a weird thing about teaching, high school. There's so many things that I wonder, like I'm just not in tune with, elementary or like any sort of like pre-secondary English education, so I just like assume certain things, and honestly, the feedback that I'm like getting in real time is like, do you actually know about this? Do you not? Like, how much more do I need to go on? But
Do
nonetheless,
you
that's
know what a simile is? Please give me any kind of response.
simile. They like simile because they can just say like or as. It's an easy one for them, typically. But yeah, they get a little wacky, and then I try to reel it in. But then I also have to say that it's not even necessarily about having the vocabulary to like to use, but just being able to think about like how from like an auditory or reading standpoint that it affects you as like a reader or a listener, and can like potentially like hook an audience member to just to like look at this part because it's doing something different. I think that's the most important thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of stuff.
I don't know. That sounds pretty. You could convince me easily of that. I mean, you don't have to know that it's a simile. Be like, you don't have to know that it's called a simile in order to know it makes it easier for you to understand. Just like new people to board gaming don't have to know what's called worker placement to know they enjoy it.
Ooh, that's a good analogy.
I'm putting my hands up in kind of the rocky stance just so everybody is aware why he's laughing.
It's perfect. Well, we're getting our English education done. But the school day is technically over, so we'll take a pause from that.
I think people come to the intertextual cardboard experience really for the English teacher talk.
Now, for my philosophical musings as to like what is the purpose of English education.
Oh, please don't make me think about that. You're gonna give
Okay.
me like a job existential crisis.
Yeah, I've been there before, so well, this is a perfect transition point anyway. We get to hear my first bad segue. So we have technically crossed over a couple of oceans, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we are to the crossover time. So earlier I deemed this as like my first crossover episode, but I do also think that the idea of a crossover might be a hair nebulous, and it could really depend on the medium. I did kind of ask you to reflect in advance on some crossover type of episodes, so we'll see how up you are to the task. And our interpretation could be different, and that's fine.
You mean I was supposed to look at your messages that told me what we were going to talk about today?
No, you don't have to do anything. Then it's a pop quiz, so you're good.
Oh, good. Students love those.
Yeah, so you're going from like you have the study guide, just taking it and ripping it up, and now just going for it. But okay, so yeah, so like I said, could be interpreted a little bit differently, and that's perfectly fine because I think it ties into this idea of an intertextual exploration, and I'm all for that. So, okay, I got a few categories, and honestly, I was going to give my preface later. I thought about some, obviously. I mean, I came up with the categories. I did a very minor amount of like poking around the internet just to like see what were some of the things that other people are saying, and to kind of like focus my my thoughts as well. But I really didn't include a ton of things that A, I didn't think about initially, or B, I didn't have any type of experience with. If I did see them, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like this is like a good crossover. So first off, crossovers and television. I think this is probably one that is probably one of the more like prolific mediums where crossovers can exist. So any crossovers in shows or episodes that you have on your mind?
Oh man. Okay. Just to be clear though to the audience, I did actually look at the question. That was a joke earlier. I am a professional. No, not really. But like not a professional, but I did look at the questions. I can now put myself safely in a certain age group by my first answer, which was like as a kid, my mind was blown when The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody crossed over with Hannah Montana. I was like, what? So that was cool. Or like the That's So Raven and Lizzie McGuire crossovers, things like that. Like I was Disney kid during that time. But I would have to say that one of my favorite crossover episodes was actually when Archer and Bob's Burgers crossed over a little bit
Oh.
because both Sterling Archer and Bob from Bob's Burgers is voiced by the same guy. And so the whole episode was basically them just making fun of that on an episode of Archer. Because I think they had both characters in it, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been like a year or so since I've watched that episode, but I just laughed so hard because a lot of the jokes were just him poking fun at himself. And in case it hasn't been like very obvious throughout the first part of this podcast, that is right up on my humor level. So I think that would be my choice for really good crossover episode. How about you?
Okay, so I funny. So like I said, I didn't include any that I didn't have like a ton of familiarity with, or I was just kind of like, okay, I could like I know these shows, but I don't really know that episode. So the ones that you mentioned, like the Disney ones, familiar with the show. I've definitely seen episodes of well, enough episodes of all four that you had mentioned there, but I couldn't say like, oh yeah, I remember that crossover. But when you mentioned the Bob's Burgers and the Archer one, like I've definitely seen that. I've seen my fair share of both of those, but it's been such a long time since I've been watching Archer or Bob's Burgers, and that's like a sad. Like I'm definitely in the same camp that I love those shows, but
And
uh
they're so different on like the style of humor, but they're both funny in their own rights. Like Bob's Burgers has a lot of like that wholesome humor,
mhm.
whereas Archer is definitely like not something you would watch with your family.
Yeah, no, that works. And you know, I so mentally you asked me to like obviously I mean that's like a really great example of of a crossover because of the humorous elements of having what's it H. John Benjamin, right?
Oh yeah,
Being
that's it.
being the voice of both, it just adds a different layer. I mean, I think animation and one category in like video games, I think is very open to being able to like cross over or I mean I think a lot more probably like parody or inclusion of but I don't think that's like a true crossover, at least that's not the way I imagine it, but I'm fine with like saying that that works too because I don't make rules, I don't enforce rules, no rules.
No, I think that makes complete sense. The What you said earlier about the parodies, not the you don't make the rules or enforce rules. Don't let your students listen to this.
Uh, hey, I'm not like I said I don't make rules, if they want to listen they can they can listen. But yeah, so that's like a really good animated example for sure. So mine, these are the two that stuck out to me. They're shows that well, I guess the latter example is not one that I've seen relatively recently, but we actually just rewatched my wife and I Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and there was a crossover bit with that and New Girl, which
Yep,
apparently
yep. I know which one you're talking about. Yep.
apparently that creates some sort of plot holes because uh, I didn't really again I didn't want to like dive too much to have my memory or have my thought process clouded, but I think there's an actor in both shows.
Yeah, I can't remember. That is one that I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, so I mean I haven't seen New Girl in a while, but we did just watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so that one popped up for me. And another one, and this has been a while too, but I know that in Community, the character Abed was really obsessed with the show Cougar Town, and I think that there was like some crossover there too.
I have never seen that show.
Okay, well, I don't want to spoil something later, but yeah. So Community, I think in terms of intertextual elements and like more like references and allusions and everything like that. It's very, very rife with that. But I think in terms of like the crossover, I think that was probably the only point where it did crossover, because I think he was in another episode of Cougar Town and they showed him just sitting there. I don't know. It's been a while, but I'm saying it counts, and maybe check it out. It's an interesting show.
All right. Yeah.
It gets a like a soft recommendation from me.
A soft recommendation. Okay. It's still a recommendation though, so
Yes.
I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, here's one that I personally struggled with. Movies.
Uh, you know what? I'm going to be a really nice guest and let the host go first. It's definitely not a stalling technique. I just am trying to be polite.
Okay, I put 2 question marks next to movies.
Well, that is not very helpful, I have to say.
Like I said, I poked around and there are definitely some things that seemed to exist out there, but they were definitely not ones that I was particularly familiar with. So we can give that like a strike through. I'm fine with it. And we can say that this is later homework for us.
I don't know, does Space Jam count? Like the NBA and Looney Tunes?
Oh, I'll count it. 100. Yeah.
Because that was like iconic. I haven't seen the LeBron James one. I'm talking about the original with Michael Jordan.
Yeah, that was okay. Now you're throwing me back. So I mean I was young when that movie came out, but that was like a pretty big like cultural thing that had happened too. So like, the advertising for it, like everything about Space Jam was huge.
Right? That's what I was thinking. I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't really know of a recent example that I can think of, but like if I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, what was big? That was huge. Like that was
Yeah,
so cool.
it was. I mean I I mean memory is a very confusing thing. Obviously, like let's see when Space Jam came out because I know that I saw it in theaters. So let's make me feel old. Let's make you feel old. Let's make us feel old. Wow, 96. Did I see this in theater? That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't even know. It says it's 1996, but maybe this is a real memory because I feel like I went to the theater to see Space Jam and I had a book of Disney optical illusions.
Okay.
So like I was sitting there waiting for Space Jam and I had this book, like those things that are they have all the visual like mess where if you like stare at them for like a really long time and then you like move them away, you can like see pictures within them.
Oh yeah, like the old like magic eyes and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
just
right?
stuff like that. So
Yeah, I remember those.
so I have like a memory in my head that's like me having one of those books waiting for the movie to start. Is it real? Is it fake? I don't know.
I don't know. Apparently you're a little older than me though, because I would have been 2 at that time. So I don't think I saw Space Jam in theaters. But I
Okay.
also remember where I saw it, which was in a library. In one of those like stay overnight at the library nights.
Yeah.
That's what I saw, and I was like, "What is this?"
Well, nonetheless, these were formative memories for us. These changed us.
Space Jam shaped us.
Well, okay. So you win that question. I don't think I have nothing else. I say that it works. It's a perfect crossover. The
This
perfect
is
crossover.
also how I win games. Is that it's this the only time I win games is when the other opponent doesn't actually move.
And also like kind of funnily enough, like one of the things that I was thinking about for like, the elements of the show and kind of like titling it too, I was thinking about like crossovers and transitions. And that's basketball terminology.
Whoa.
So I was like, honestly, I'm not even joking. I was contemplating titling it like crossovers and transitions parentheses, not a basketball episode. I'm not lying. So basketball authentically entered the chat.
I'm a Pistons fan, so I actually don't know how to play good basketball.
A Pistons fan? I thought you said you're from Minnesota. I don't want to spoil
I am from
this.
Minnesota. That
Okay.
is true. Like good memory. Yes, I am from Minnesota, but originally I'm from Detroit. So I am Detroit
Oh.
everything, including my Lions actually playing football.
Okay. Okay. Well, we get like these nice like regional rivalries, I guess. So my Packers didn't do so great
Oh,
last weekend. Well, whatever. That's a different podcast. That's a different story. That's my NFL armchair quarterback one. So if you're not
is that a
subscribed,
real thing?
no.
Oh, I was ready to like, oh, okay.
I don't think anybody wants to hear that.
Well, not from a Packers fan, maybe, but
Hey,
from other people.
fair enough. But yeah, okay. So basketball's authentically entered. Basketball. That's so we're getting super intertextual. Okay. So you win. I didn't have response. Space Jam, iconic, very good crossover movie. How about I got 3 more categories. Books.
Ooh, okay. I think that this is maybe like the peak of nerdiness,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna go with Ready Player One here. Just because I remember the experience, and I say the experience of it because I listened to it on audiobook
Mhm.
and I listened to it while I was still learning my neighborhood in Japan. So I was kind of like taking in all these news sites while also having like all these familiar references kind of streaming into my ears. And so it was really cool. Like just to be like, oh yeah, I recognize that. And then with my eyes, they'll be like, I do not recognize that. But it was just one of those things that like I remember really fondly when I first moved to Japan of like reading, well, listening to that book and hearing all these kind of references and being like, oh, I got that one. Oh, I don't understand that one. I have to look that one up when I get home.
Yeah, I think that works really well. Yeah, so I think like for me, I mean that one yeah, it has a lot. So it has, like a lot of Easter egg type of things, which is actually ingrained into like what the book is in the first place. So it's a very like unique novel. I liked it. And the fact that it kind of like has the characters entering this virtual reality to encompass like pre-created worlds.
Yeah, everything feels 80s. Even like the storyline has a very like 80s movie feel to it.
Indeed. Without falling down a rabbit hole, thumbs up or thumbs down to the movie.
I have heard mixed reviews about it, so honestly, I haven't seen it because I want to keep the book memory alive. How about you?
I'll
And I need
say
your crossover book as well.
okay. I don't really have a book, but I'll get my answer in a second. I do have an answer here. I didn't put down question marks. I'm not bailing yet. I would say keep keep your current status of just reading the book and not watching the movie. not
Okay.
not terrible, but it does it changes a lot, like in really weird ways.
Oh, so not even in like better ways that might fix some of the plot
It,
holes, which I don't really know if there are any off the top of
yeah,
my head, but okay.
yeah, it just changes a lot, and it's not a movie for me. Like if I think there's a lot of like visual enjoyment, like to see some of the things that were mentioned in the books, and to have a lot of uh, other references. I think there's even like a different set of references of things that just kind of characters that like pop up and exist in different places in the movie, which is cool, but on the whole, I would say it's not worth it.
Good to know.
All right.
All right, what's your crossover book?
So for me, like I said, I was kind of poking around, kind of looking, and what I came up with was more of a more of like different like authors that create their own like fictional worlds and have characters within them like go into different books. So like Faulkner does it a lot, and like has like different families that are in certain novels be in other ones. And in general, like I have to keep pushing my Faulkner reading, but I'm like a big fan. I've read a few of his novels now and a couple of his shorts, so not a specific answer, but just like an author. And then I was thinking too that it'd be cool if, like, and maybe I don't know if this exists, but if like authors collaborated in a way where they had like shared worlds where they had like the characters crossover, I think that'd be cool too. But
Okay, so if theoretically you would have two authors do that, who would you want to have that would do that?
I mean, I'm not even super up on modern literature just because I'm trying to backtrack so much. So, I mean, let's say let's like make like Faulkner work with like Don DeLillo. I mean, this can't happen, but I think that'd
Well, it's
be
all theoretical.
I think that would be like a pairing that would intrigue me.
I wish like I had read them because it's one of those where it's like, especially Faulkner, you hear it a lot of like you have to read it once and maybe like the first time you're not going to get it, but you have to keep going through it. I've heard that a lot and I just haven't gotten to it. So
And and I think like yeah, I think a lot of his stories, or at least like in The Sound and the Fury or Absalom, they start off in such kind of like convoluted uh multiple storylines, and like there's no way that unless you're like really like working through it that it's going to become like initially clear of what's going on, and that's like the way that they start, and then and then I think sometimes it gets easier as you go, but it's an investment. But for DeLillo, I would say like a good starting point, and just like one of the books that I loved was White Noise, which was actually just made into a movie that I haven't seen yet, but it's a unique book.
generally, if there's a book and a movie out for the same thing, which do you do first?
I I would say like, well, first off, I would have never thought that White Noise would have been adapted into a movie in the first place. So typically, like if I'm like approaching it, I would go book first, just because I can't get some of the visual images out of my head when I'm reading. So I'm
Makes
kind of
sense.
yeah, so I'm kind of like working through. Well, I work through like a bunch of different books very very slowly all at once, so it just makes them go even slower than I already read. But like I kind of want to read. I've probably mentioned this, so this is way back in the summer. I took a pause from this, but I do want to read like Frank Herbert's 6 Dune books before I like hop into the movies.
Well, good luck.
Indeed. 2 down, 4 to go.
Oh, all right. You're a decent way at least.
I'm moving. But it could be a while before I get to see the movies. Let's just put it that way. I mean, honestly,
Sci-fi is my preferred genre, so you'll have to
okay.
tell me like as you go through the Dune series what you think of all the stories and characters you're introduced to and things all that.
Yeah, I'm excited to move on, but like I've kind of taken a pause to like finish up some of the other books that I had sidelined and gotten halfway through or what have you
Sure.
for that. But yeah, so that's my book answer. It's not like a concrete example because it's just like a thought, I guess. Okay, now we get to open it up a lot. I think we got a lot of options in video games.
Okay. I am going to give a very consumeristic answer.
Mhm.
Consumerist answer? I think I'm making up words again, which if you listen to the podcast, you know it is every episode. But I just remember like the first one that I thought was really cool. So I guess I'm really going back to childhood for a lot of these. But it was Crazy Taxi. And the fact that you could go to KFC and Pizza Hut was like the coolest thing. it's a really bad example, I think, of a crossover because it's really just paid advertising. But to like little Eric, it was like, all right, I gotta like bring someone to the Pizza Hut real fast. Kind of thing was like so cool.
I can't say that I know that I played Crazy Taxi, but I don't really have much of a memory like sync to that. I don't think I played it much either.
It was like in the Dreamcast days and things like that. Oh man, I played that game all the time.
I think I think for me, I mean there's a lot. I think my mind initially went to kind of like just different systems, universes, and fighting games. You know, Smash Brothers, things of that
Oh
nature
sure.
is pretty clear. But then, and
Oh
again, I did just kind of like poke around. I didn't like just grab random things. But I think one that I saw and I remembered was in Metal Gear Solid 3, how there's like an ape escape mini game. So I think like for weird things in video games, obviously Kojima, you could find a lot of like interesting elements in his.
oh for sure.
And then another one that I'd played a good amount of too, and it's tough. It's not a game that I'm good at. Is Super Meat Boy. Okay, so Super Meat Boy is a timed platforming game. So you get like a level. I mean, it's a play on Super Mario Brothers, so it has the same initials, SMB for Super Mario Brothers, Super Meat Boy. But this one's a lot more punishing, and you play a character that is meat.
Okay.
Like you slide down walls and everything like that. But you can unlock playable characters from like Half-Life and other things that you can be as well.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of it, is like how punishing it is. You ever just like realize like how weird things sound out of context when you have to describe it to somebody? It's like, okay, so there's this video game I like. You're playing as meat. But I can't believe I forgot Super Smash Brothers. I've played that game probably more than pretty much any other game. So I can't believe I forgot that one. That is such a good shout.
Yeah,
I think it
I
must
mean,
be a Nintendo thing. They love it because there's that. There's like Animal Crossing where you can always play like the older SNES games if you have it in your house.
mhm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's like a really cool kind of like world building and having those overlaps in their games and their catalogs. It just kind of makes them uniquely them. But
Yeah, I'm going with you in this round because mine's was basically paid advertising. It was paid advertising, not basically. And then you actually came up with good answers.
indeed, like I said, I had to like poke around, but then I saw I'm like, oh yeah, I played that. Oh yeah, I played that. So it wasn't just, I mean, the fighting ones were actually top of my head. So I was like, oh yeah. I mean, there's like a million where you have characters from all over the place. We are on to the final category though, and that is board games.
All right. So I am going in the direction that you kind of went with books, and I'm going a little bit theoretical because there's a couple that I definitely want to see more than ones that I have seen. And that might just be based on like where I am, really. But for example, like I'm cool with a Wingspan retheme, but like dragons wouldn't have been my first choice. It would have definitely been Pokemon for sure. Like would have been cool, I thought. They're
Perhaps.
retheming so many things as Pokemon these days. Why not Wingspan? Right? Instead of eggs, you have like little Pokeballs. I would so buy that.
Maybe like there were licensing hangups. Maybe that was the goal.
There you go. And then we're just like, all right, we got to fall back on dragons, I guess. Um,
That said, that game
but
does look really cool.
it does, it really does. I think there must have been some kind of embargo because like all of a sudden, like my YouTube feed is filled with like 10 different channels that posted a Wormspan review yesterday. I'm like, all right. Clearly they were told yesterday they can be released. Um, but also the other one I came up with was one of the only solo games I play is Spirit Island. And I know that like a lot of the gods are kind of based off of mythology, but it would just be really cool to have some that are like Zeus or Hades is there to defend the island. Would just be really cool, I think.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I could see that. That would be it would be like a very interesting if you're and grabbing from all sorts of other like uh all kind of like culture, like mythology and
Right.
like having like figures from each. That'd be something neat.
Yeah, I think even like as like a promo or something, it would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah. No.
How about you? What did you come up with? Oh,
I was gonna say was that yeah, I mean that's just a game that I've played a couple times and I love, and I mean it's gonna take me a while to get through all the spirits that I have already anyway. So
it is
whenever you
amazing the consistency of high level quality of all the different ones, like all the different spirits throughout all the expansions. I kind of can't believe it.
okay, well I mean I don't doubt it. I mean just like the way that the game was initially crafted and created, and like I'm like, well, this was an absurdly good game. I would imagine that level of care and detail went into like everything. So I'll again another thing I can report back to you on. So you get some Dune thoughts and you get Spirit Island thoughts. So you can hear those within the next 5 years. All right.
Ooh. Well, great for the timeline. How about you? What's your crossover board game?
The thing I this actually popped into my head, and I I think it works. Kind of speaking of Stonemeyer games, I was thinking about all the different promo packs that Jamie has for other games for Rolling Realms. If I didn't say that a game already, but I think kind of taking like the like a part of one of the like a mechanism or a setting or something that another game is doing and like having that be implemented into a card or little play card for Rolling Realms is what I would say works as a crossover for board games, in my opinion.
Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, I had a couple other in my mind, but I think I threw them away, so they're gone.
I haven't played it either, but I've heard good things about the Unlock one that does a couple of games. Like there's one like in the Pandemic universe and one in the Catan universe and one in the Ticket to Ride universe, I think.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I think that definitely works. I know that definitely works. That's a neat concept. I just haven't done a ton of those games in general either, so
We pretty much went through almost all of them during COVID. We imported them, like our game group imported all of them. And then because you can like the Unlock series, you don't rip up, so you can reuse.
mhm.
So we imported every single one from abroad, and then we would like meet up like during the times we were allowed to go outside and be like, "All right, I finished this one. Here you go. Okay, I finished this one. Here you go." Like
Oh,
secret unlock drug deals.
perfect. That well, you know what? Let's take that idea. I like that. I think yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Like that's really cool, and that also seems like a community type of a thought. And in one of my crossover episodes, I did bring up the show Community, but now we're moving onto a category that is about community. So I mentioned earlier that you asked me to be on your podcast, have those like year-end thoughts, and one of them was just like my contemplations. I don't even know if it made much sense, but it was just thinking about that idea of communities, about like whatever that community is, whether that's like finding more groups, doing more cons, just being more involved in online communities that are more kind of just like beneficial for you and your speed, and finding what it is that helps you like grow and connect in and have like a nice time while playing board games too, kind of like adding to that experience of it as well. I just had me thinking about community, and I really like that, and I think that your episode in having all sorts of like different people on was like an effort to build community and to like have different people saying things. And I just really like that. I thought that was neat. And I just wanted to talk to you about like some of the ways that you're thinking about your board gaming communities, like both offline in real life and online, and things that you connect to other people with, because that's how we met, and that's how we've started chatting. So
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I have to thank you for coming in clutch for that episode because basically, I mean, everybody who participated in that episode did it on like a week's notice. It was like a week before. I was like, it'd be a good idea if I could just ask a bunch of people. I'm sure nobody's doing anything around the holidays. So thanks for that. Because yeah, I think it made a lot of sense. For me, I think community, like, it starts off with the idea that like nobody prepares you for being an adult and how hard it is to maintain and create relationships. Like I always kind of thought it was like a myth, like when I was in high school, it'd be like, no, these are gonna be my friends forever. And then you go off to college and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this is harder than I expected. But now I'm like making friends as an adult. I'm going to have my college friends forever. This is going to be easy. And then you leave college and people are getting married or they're having babies or somebody moves to Japan and doesn't come back for 7 years, things like that. And it's just like, oh my goodness, maybe this is harder than I thought. And so for me, board games have these kind of two different community aspects to them. And it's what I mentioned before. It's like maintaining relationships. Like it doesn't have to just be board games, but games in general. And it helps me talk to my friends that literally, like, I don't think I have been in the US I haven't lived in the US since 2017. And so I haven't, like, I got to see my high school friends for the first time 2 years ago since like 2016 for a wedding. But we've maintained communication by playing games online and checking in with each other and seeing how everybody's doing. Okay. How's the spouse doing? Oh, how's your baby doing? Things like that. But it's also a way, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast episode, of creating new relationships because it gives you that opportunity to really come together with people that you have not met and maybe doesn't even speak the same language as you. But it gives you a set of rules to kind of say, okay, you know what, for the next hour, we're going to play by the set of rules of this piece of cardboard that's in the middle of the table, and we're just going to kind of do this thing together. And hey, I kind of enjoyed doing this cardboard thing with you. You want to do this again next week? And it's just like these little things. And I think Board Game Arena, it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way, because for a lot of times, like it's kind of like, okay, can I really judge how fun a game is based on its digital implementation? And that's maybe for a completely separate episode and for people that, are smarter than me to actually talk about. But on the other side, it's like, you know what? I am getting to meet people like you that I would never get to game with normally. Like we would never get to interact with each other if we couldn't play these games online. And actually, a lot of the friends that I've made or have come on my podcast specifically, like, are people that I met playing board games on Board Game Arena. And you know what? Those really close knit friends and people that you can just play some games with online are both super important for what I think is like kind of a healthy social life if you're an extrovert like me. How about you? What do board games kind of mean to you when you think of community? Because yeah, you came on and you talked all about how during the New Year's you were thinking so much about community. What does that look like to you? What does kind of 2024 community building through board games look like?
Well, I mean, and I really like your thoughts on that. That makes a ton of sense, and it definitely seems just. I mean, I don't know you as well as I know myself. It seems like you're a little bit more kind of like willing to go out there, move different countries, try different experiences than I am as well, and then going out and meeting people in those social settings. So, one of the things is, well, it's kind of funny. You talked about like your high school friends. I still have like a pretty close group of high school friends. Obviously, some have moved away, but even those for the people that are kind of in the surrounding areas. If they're around, we can try to set something up, and that's one of the things that I have done too. Is like if I know so and so is coming from like the western part of the country and they're visiting, it's like, hey, let's all meet up. And now that I play more games, I think games are a nice thing to do. So things like one of the most recent ones that happened, like we played Wavelength. It's a nice big social group type of game. Played Ready
It's a
Set
great
Bet.
game.
Played some Ready
Oh,
Set
I
Bet,
haven't
and
tried
I
that one
think
yet. How was that?
it was good. I actually, like, two of my friends that were here bought it immediately after they played it. So
That's a great sign.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, like I can't, I'm not gonna like dive into all the technical elements of it. It's literally just rolling dice, moving horses, and trying to get your bets in like well you can, and then having things go completely wrong once the other horse starts winning. But it was fun. It was funny. We definitely liked it. So I think that is kind of like a thing that has existed within, some communities that I'm already a part of. But I would definitely like to. I'd like to get to like some cons. Never have been, especially more kind of like gaming centric ones. And I know that I've talked to people, in like different fora and online about ones close to me that they're like, this is like a really cool one. It's definitely more gaming focused, and like people that are saying that they like some of the smaller ones. If you like smaller ones, you go to this. So I'd love to do that. There's actually a new board gaming store that's 5 miles from my house that I haven't been to.
That is dangerous.
So just like pushing myself, and again, everybody's got stuff that they got to do, but just trying to carve out a little time, meet some new people that obviously have the same interest as what I'm looking for, because I think my online communities have been nice, just like doing more Discord stuff, getting familiar with that, and I've met people through, like, people in real life through Facebook Marketplace and games, and and have like real friendships of chatting and meeting up and everything like that too, and just like other things. But for me, the goal is just like supplement a little bit with finding more people who already have like that shared interest, to play more games.
Yeah, and hopefully that's becoming more of a thing in the United States, because I think really like being here in Europe actually like and being interested in board games, I was shocked when I moved here of just like how many people are just like, yeah, board games are just for everybody. They're not a kids thing. But we still see it in the United States as generally a kids thing. And then we're sitting here talking about, I mean, on a board game centric podcast about like, hey, these things are actually really good for communities. And I found that with a lot of friends that I've made is that we actually grew close over board games, even though they would have never thought to do that. I'll just like go over and I'll bring a board game like just in case. Like, you're like first meeting people and it's kind of like, do we have an icebreaker? What are we really going to talk about? Especially like my best friends in Japan are a group of guys that I met because of all of our girlfriends. And so we were kind of like, like that thing when like the husbands or boyfriends are sitting in the room, like, what's up? What's up? You're dating her, huh? Yeah. Like, it's like, okay, I bring up this game and it's like something that they would have never requested, but we got closer because of it. And so it's interesting. Like, I hope that more people are kind of getting open to board games as a way of meeting new people and having a shared hobby, even if they hadn't thought about it before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you hit it right on the head. I think it's definitely something that's starting, like that kind of like thought or feeling is starting to grow, but maybe it's not super common. And I think it's something that, like, we obviously want to see too, because games aren't just for kids, and they have like so many different positive uh, potential impacts in many different ways, socially,
Do you have
brain
a game
wise.
that you specifically like bring out when you're like, oh, okay, this is a good icebreaker game or like the best social game? Do you have something you recommend?
I would say like I'd say the two that sorry, I'll say three. I mean, I think two of them are basically not basically the same. They're similar. I think ones that I've had a lot of success with. I mean, I mentioned Wavelength, and I think that works really well. I think, but I do think that there is potentially some element of. I think it would play differently depending on the group. If it's a group you're familiar with, it's going to play differently than a group of people that you're less familiar with for
That's
sure.
true.
But I think like just one is a good one, and then So Clover is a very similar example, something that has that cooperative element to it and is just word association and the social elements that can come from that. And then
That's a good point because cooperation is like a good way to kind of get on the right foot with people. Like, let's all work together for a common goal for the next 30 minutes. And then we can see if we can be competitive after that.
yeah, and I think this isn't it's like competitive cooperation, but I think similar to Wavelength, but Green Team wins is an example that could work too. But that one you just want to get in sync with what the group is thinking in order to score points. So
I've heard really good things about that one. I need to try that one.
yeah, that gets like a solid recommend for me. So check it out.
All right.
All right. How about you for that question then? Like a good.
Ooh, I mean, I shot it from the rooftops as much as I possibly can, but it's definitely Ito for me. It's ITO. It replaced Wavelength for me because it's essentially a mix of Wavelength and the Mind. So it's like the cooperation of Mind that you're all trying to get between 1 and 99, but it works on the Wavelength thing where it's like you can only give a hint by saying a clue of where your number is. So like 99 would be more of something, 1 would be less of something. So if I said like, oh, what's the best pizza topping? Because that's our topic. Like the person who says 99 might say pineapple because it's absolutely the best pizza topping, and I will not hear any arguments. And then 1 would be something like anchovies. And then you got to go around the table and be like, okay, I think like let's all agree. I think like the pineapple is probably higher than the anchovies, and you just have to put them in order.
So like my question is, I'm trying to work around to it. If I'm like not mistaken, there's a new version that you've been shouting from the rooftops about too. Like, I guess speaking of like, it's a game that I wasn't super familiar with and like saw because of your mentionings and everything like that. So like you trying to highlight like different games, like what's the, I guess, availability? I guess that's a question I have in short of acquiring either version.
So I always mention this on every episode or every video that we do because this is a huge question because most of the games we're covering are from like Japan or Korea or something. But Ito is very available because it is still one of the most popular games in Japan. Like no matter what, if you go to a board game cafe, there is almost always a table playing it to the point that every board game cafe I've been to has to have multiple copies. So you can get it on Amazon Japan and they will ship it internationally.
Okay,
And I
so
know they're always adding countries as to where they're shipping. So right now, Ito Rainbow is the new one that you're talking about, which is seen as like Ito 2.0 by the designer. And our newest video, spoiler alert, recommends that version, partly because it's just a lot more accessible. Like it's a lot more available and it comes with more, and you can play the original version with the new version. But also, they have already announced that they've at least partnered with somebody for an English version. They haven't announced when that's going to be released, but they did release an English version at Essen in a very, very limited capacity. So it's definitely like out there. And you can just, right now, honestly, you could just play it with the mind cards or any game that you have 1 to 99. And then all the topics are online.
but the art in it looks too good to do that route instead, in my opinion.
Oh, the art is very divisive. I would say like you need to ask people about like what they think. Like go look it up and decide if the art is for you that's out there listening. Some people really like it, and some people are like, get that art as far away from me as possible.
Well, I would, I think it's cool. I would much rather play with it than mind cards.
That's true. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Well, I like it too, for what it's worth. Cool. So, okay. I guess like another follow-up question. I'm just trying to think. So what is like your pulse on Ito's popularity outside of Japan? So obviously, you're shouting it from the rooftops. It's available. Like anybody could, hop on and get it delivered internationally.
Yeah, I think since the Essen release, more people I have seen it talked about on a couple more podcasts and a couple more YouTube channels because you don't have to translate every single thing. The cards are easy enough that like the topics, you could just literally put like your phone over it in Google Lens and it's like the text is super huge, so it's very, very easy to do. But I mean, having a game in English is just a lot easier. I've heard more podcasts and more YouTube channels talking about it. I know Trick Talkers, which is a podcast that we have a lot of overlap in audience. Um, they have been like they've literally done full episodes on Ito in the last couple months, and it's making me so happy.
Yeah, I mean that's nice, like to have something that is as good, and knowing that it's just kind of like growing and more people are seeing it. It's like, oh, you like it too. It's like, well, of course you like it. Why wouldn't you like it?
Right? Yeah.
Neat.
Of course, there's always that like little hipster part of you too, of like, I liked it before it was cool, but
Yes. Oh, I think I had like an unintentional hipster moment before, like earlier in the episode. If I like remember it, I'll bring it up, or I won't bring it up. But nonetheless, yeah, it's I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know, doing as much as you can to try to like shout out things, and that's kind of like your goal as well, just like bring more of an audience to particular things, getting those crossovers again. All right. Oh man, so that a lot of talk about community, and my brain is now like over here as opposed to like where I was like initially thinking. But it's a good diversion of different thoughts. But we get to transition a little bit from one of the communities that was mentioned, and that was like board game arena. So this is our kind of final episode specific category, and that is about the game that we're playing on Board Game Arena, which is currently, unless things have changed since the past like couple weeks, your 7th favorite board game of all time, and that is Innovation. And we're in the midst of our 3rd asynchronous game of Innovation right now, which is an innovative game. And oh my goodness, just for anybody who's unfamiliar with it, this is my very poor explanation. You have cards. You can play the cards. You can keep the cards in your hand if you want. I mean, honestly, there's potentially benefits to doing all sorts of different things, but they have like a rank, and you have to get that rank out on your board in order to acquire more or do different things with the cards. You want to score them, and then from scoring, you want to claim achievements, but claiming achievements could take your turn. It's wacky. You want icons. I don't know. There's like 80 different things going on, but like once you get it, and then you don't get it because you play against somebody who's like a million times better than you, and you lose in like 2 seconds, and you're like, wait, what just happened? I thought I know how to play this game. and then you realize that you don't. But so that's the game that we're playing, and that is section kind of like number 3, which is Innovation times 3. A brief chat about the game. Any further thoughts of you in addition to what I said, and then talking about what you're looking for in terms of kind of like innovation, and also like looking for things to, and I think this ties into like what you're trying to do that is innovative with like your channel. In part, it's not everything that you're doing that's innovative with your channel and your podcast as well, and kind of tying those two things together in what you're looking for in board games later. But I'll re-question those things later on. So your thoughts on my explanation of innovation and any other further ones that you have on the game that is innovation.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely have to break that down one by one. But
Yes.
for right now, yes, you're right. It is my seventh favorite board game of all time. It's about to move to eighth, I think, if you beat me for the third straight game. Um, no, I lose a lot. Anybody who plays with me knows that I'm just pretty bad at games. Mostly because I play games in a way that like I try to see what if I pull these levers, what happens this time. I'm an exploratory gamer. If I think that's like a category where it's just like I win. I feel like I win if I did something that nobody has seen before happen in the game. So it's like, oh, like for innovation, I think in the second game, I tried to win based off of one card in which if you get rid of a card in your hand, you can score other cards in your hand. So I just loaded up on like 15 cards in my hand. And it was just like, all right, that's fine. I'm just going to get a bunch of points because I'm going to get rid of a card every time. And then I'm going to score like 3 or 4 of them. And then you played a card that said I had to empty my hand and my game was over. Um, so, but it was like, all right, I want to see how this wins. But it's a game like that. It's a game in which you always think it's unfair, but both people think it's unfair because you both people are going, how did you do that? That doesn't seem like it should happen. Now let me play something that doesn't seem like it should be able to happen in a game that works, but it works. So, I mean, there's a couple different kind of stepping on points to it. There's the perpetually out of print Glory to Rome. There's innovation, which is like just crazy. And then there's mottainai, which, hey, is a Japanese word to mean waste. Kind of. It doesn't really have a good translation.
Okay.
But is the easiest stepping on point for people that like maybe want to try it. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been enjoyable playing with you. Innovation for some reason seems to be the game that when I meet people, we tend to play that first before branching off into other games. And I don't know why.
I mean, I think I picked it because I saw that you were playing it. Like I looked at your games played. So when you're like, hey, just pick a game, I'm like, well, we both played this one, so that's the reason for our playing it. I think
It's a good choice. Thank you for choosing it.
I think you have a chance with this one. So I don't think 3 straight's going to happen. I've been trying to like cut cards to the point where I find a red card so that my red cards actually splay right. So I've been wasting actions doing that, but we'll see. Maybe it'll work.
Did you hear that, audience? The most optimistic compliment he could give me is that I have a chance. Not a good chance, not a solid chance. It's a soft chance.
Well, I would honestly, I don't know. This one has me feeling uneasy. Let's just put it that way. I hesitate to put innovation in my top 10 for one reason, and that's because I own it. And I'm think like from a physical standpoint, I'm just going to move on to the new version that's going to be coming out because that seems even wackier.
The age 11 cards are a thing.
Well, it also seems like there's like a mechanism for kind of getting rid of ages entirely.
Correct.
Yeah, I haven't like intentionally looked into it too much, but it seems more out there. So nonetheless, I haven't played this game in real life, like with the physical cards.
Interesting. It is a game though, and it kind of brings back talking about BGA. I think it is a game that works a lot better digitally in terms of like learning the game, kind of figuring out how everything works, how the scoring works, what can I do, what can't I do.
Yeah, I think some of those like conditional things that you're mentioning work really well online, and seeing things that other people are doing in order to help you learn it too. I guess I would definitely play in real life with somebody that knows how to play the game as well, but I'm not sure how much I'd want to teach it.
Oh yeah.
So there's
Do you
that.
have like a game that's probably in your top 10 that you're like, man, I really like playing this online and in person? Or do you find that most of your top 10 you probably have like that physical experience with?
Um, well, so I think like there are potential. This is weird. So I play a lot of games where I'll like play multi-handed too.
Mhm.
So like I'll have them in real life and I'll play them multi-handed, and there'll be times where I'll come back to them multi-handed, but then I'll play them in between on Board Game Arena. And I think a couple, and I haven't made a top 10 list, so two that would have a chance of being on there that I have actually not played with people, but I have played in real life would be Twa and Beyond the Sun,
Oh, sure, yeah.
which speaking of being not good at games, I'm on like a 4 game last place streak in Beyond the Sun, so there's that.
Well, if you want to end that streak, I'll play you on that. But Twa's interesting because I hear the digital implementation is actually not good.
it, I I've heard that it's not particularly great, and I could attest to that. So I just have to be careful, make sure I do what I want to do before I actually do it. Because I think the biggest thing is the lack of an undo feature.
Which is an odd choice.
It is. I mean, I feel like at this point too, if that is a common complaint, that it'd be fixable.
We just both did the shrug emoji, by the way, everybody. Everybody.
Indeed. But we had the double shrug. So I'm not going to be coding or creating any board game arena implementations anytime soon. So I'm not going to speak on that. But it's a nice way to get a little bit of play in, and then also just like learn some of the cards a little bit better and how to like strategize with them. But those are both great games. So to answer your question, I don't know if either of those two would make it. They would definitely have a good chance, but I think on the whole, I'd probably like I would have had like a decent amount of like in-person play to count them for better or for worse or for subjective reasons that make sense. Who knows?
Sure, makes sense. That's why I asked. I was like, I was curious.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say honestly, if I played like Innovation in person like 2 times, it'd be a top 10 game. Unless those two plays were terrible for some reason.
Well, if I make it to Wisconsin, that's where you are? If you're a
That's where
Packers fan?
yep, I am from Wisconsin.
If I make it to Wisconsin, then
Or
we'll have to
or
play.
or like a Midwest con, we could find one. And I mean, honestly, now that I say it, I'm pretty sure that both Gen Con and Origins are like Indianapolis and Columbus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. How about that, Midwesterners? We really like our board games. It's because there's so much snow. What else are we gonna do?
Yeah, I was gonna say, right now I don't want to be outside, so I'll play board games instead.
Did you guys have like classes in school of how to ski and snowboard? Like as part of your school curriculum?
No.
All right.
Did you?
Yeah, I don't remember if it was like a class specifically, but I think it was like a unit in gym where we had to learn how to do that. So we like went to the mountains.
Huh. That's cool.
Hashtag just Minnesota things.
I mean, honestly, kind of jealous. That seems neat.
That was fun.
I mean, like for the longest time, I know my elementary school had like a ski club where basically you'd go out to a local like ski and snowboarding hill if that's like the thing that you're interested in. And I, for the longest time, was convinced that they were just going out on like a hill outside of the school and just like skiing and snowboarding down that. And I'm like, oh well. I eventually learned that that was not the case, and that there was like a real place for people to go.
That's funny.
But yeah, no, honestly can't think of any classes like that or any activities as far as I can remember. So okay, cool. Well, oh goodness gracious. We're at Innovation, we're on Ski Hills, we're in Minnesota education, and we're back to you, and I'll try to kind of combine the thoughts. So, I talked about, well, I kind of mentioned it, but part of your goal with your channel and your show is to like bring exposure to different games and presumably finding ones that have like some sort of, I mean, some sort of like appeal and or probably innovative like hook to them. So kind of like you talked about a little bit before, but I guess like what is it about a game that has you thinking that it's something that you really want to, like in Ito's case, like shout from the rooftops, or really beyond like that not the mere, beyond that like overarching goal of really trying to like bring broader exposure to games that you feel like deserve it, but like what is it about a game that's really going to have you do that more?
Oh, man, that is really a difficult question. Um, you know what? I don't even know if there's like a particular thing that we particularly look for, but it's more in the sense that like it's doing something a bit unique. Because that's one of my favorite things about the Asian board game scene, if I can like overgeneralize a bit, is that like you have the kind of German game, Euro game kind of thing that's like, the stereotypically not really, the theme is not important, but the mechanics are the amount of no luck, right? The lack of luck that's in the game. And then on the other side, you have Ameritrash games, right? That are kind of the opposite of that, right? Very theme forward games. And hopefully, like the mechanics kind of have something to do with the theme and might be lucky and things like that, right? But what I find about Asian games is like they really combine the two very, very well. Because actually, like a lot of games that my Japanese friends will actually have in their house, because we have to remember that Japanese houses, like Japanese apartments, are just like a lot smaller. So there's not a whole lot of space for Japanese games, but or there's not a lot of space for like games in general, but a lot of them are actually like 20-year-old games or like 1990s games from Germany. And that'll be the inspiration for a lot of games that are made now. And so it's this kind of thing of like what I liked about Ito, for example, and what we look for in some like the party games that are coming out of Japan is like these are games that are getting people that aren't normally into board games to go so far as to go to a board game cafe in the afternoon to try it out. Like board games are really in the past couple years really starting to gain ground in popularity in Japan specifically. Sorry that I can't talk about other countries. Like I've just like lived in Japan, but you have other games like that that'll try to bring people into board games that aren't normally into games. But this is the same country that's also pretty internationally known for its innovations in trick takers and climbers and shedders. And so there's a lot of things happening there. And then on top of that, you have some of the weirdest dexterity games that you'll find. I mean, just the other day, Tokyo Highway, the new edition of it is coming out of Ethan, and that's kind of an internationally known one. And this is the same country that's kind of coming out of this. And more, it's just like I think people know about Oink and Sashi, but there's so much going out of it that I don't know if there's a particular thing we look for to cover in a game, other than here is something that is interesting and indicative of how diverse the board gaming scene is here. If that makes sense.
No, I think that makes like a ton of sense. Sorry, if you're getting a weird look for me, I'm trying to see a couple of I mean, you mentioned one of the more well-known ones in. Well, you literally just said it like 2 seconds ago. Oink,
Tokyo
oink,
Highway?
as
Dexterity
oink,
game? Oh, oink.
oink, and like kind of like some odd dexterity games. But I pre-ordered both Drapolter and Rafter 5.
Ah, sure, yeah. The new
and,
ones.
and those look really fun, and I think it's interesting being able to like fit that much of a dexterity game into that size box too. Like, I mean, I have, you know, Scout because a lot of people have Scout. I have Maskman and Fake Artist as well. But I guess I never really thought like, hey, you can put all these random pieces that you have to try to hold in your hand into a box for a game.
Right, yeah.
Hey, I'm excited. I will urgently await them being able to like be released from their hold position. So, but yeah, no. So that's what I was just thinking about when you're talking. But yeah, overall, like you just like kind of looking for, you know, other games that are doing, you know, similar or different things, and just bring exposure to them in that way makes a lot of sense. So, one of the things too, that I, you know, with your channel, I liked you bring in the community. You think about like science and history of games as well, and also kind of backtracking to community again. One of the things that I liked that you've just recently did was create these Tokyo Game Market mystery boxes. So what are overall, like, what are some of the things that you were thinking about from like an innovation or experimental or just trying things standpoint for you for this year that you want to talk about?
Oh, that is a difficult question. Mostly because I don't think we're innovative at all, which I know I'm doing a great job at marketing my channel between between I'd say one interesting thing during this podcast. But I say that because it's almost an intentional thing of, you know, I don't have the personality to do like the humorous skits, like something like a shut up and sit down or a no pun included or things like that. And I don't have the cinematography skills, at least not yet, to do something like Tim Tuan or Shelfside or a channel like that. But at the same time, what we do have that maybe that even if like even big channels like that don't have is access to a community, to a board game scene that to many seem very inaccessible. And a lot of that reason is like a lot of things that like kind of can't be helped. It's just kind of it is what it is kind of thing where it's just like, okay, maybe because it's language barrier or the fact that like it's really expensive to fly to Japan. Like, and it's a different kind of equation when you're looking at buying something that you have to import. And so the whole thing that we're trying to do is kind of give access to that scene. So in every one of our videos, even though we're not doing like really funny skits or amazing special effects or anything like that, we're just trying to bring people like information, because a lot of times the only information you're going to have is probably in Japanese, let's say, and you can just hope that Google Translate did a good enough job. Or we try to give general overviews and teaches of games that don't have an English rule book, or just the fact that like I know that it's a hot topic in the review scene of, do we include price in our evaluation of a game? And yet our normal series when we review games, it's part of a series called Import or Not, where literally one of the evaluations things is how much does it cost? Because, you know, if you're getting something that's in your country, let's say 6 NIMT, right? You might have heard something good about 6 NIMT, and you know how much it costs you to try that out? $8, $10. You could get it on Amazon. You can go to your friendly local game store. You can go to the new game store that's, you know, 5 minutes away, whatever it is, or 5 miles away, right? And then you're just like out $8 to $10. It kind of sucks, but it's only $8 to $10. But if you heard something on your favorite podcast of a game that's from Japan that you have to import, it might only be a $15 game, but it's going to be another $15 in import fees. So it's kind of one of those things where, okay, you know, we need to include that in our reviews. And it's just more of like giving access to that. Like, is it actually worth that import? And then part of that is what you so nicely alluded to in the lead up to this question, which is also, okay, I am a teacher. And part of that is like, my background is in psychology, it's in political science, like the social sciences, and in research specifically. So, let's talk about game design. Let's talk about different ways people experience FOMO. Like, what's the psychology of FOMO? And then let's say it in a way that anybody can understand. We don't expect you to come and listen to one of my lecture episodes, as I call them, knowing anything about it. Anybody can do it, even if you're not normally interested in it, because it'd be so cool if it's like, you know what? I don't normally listen to anything about psychology, but I learned a really cool psychology fact today. Like, great. Awesome. That makes me happy. And then finally, in the Tokyo Game Market boxes, which started as a way of saying, like, you know what? Japanese games and these games at the Tokyo Game Market are starting to get really, really popular as people have more access to them. Because, hey, Japan actually took a long time to reopen after COVID. But now that it's there, what's happening is the same thing that happens with tickets. It happens with so many other things. It's like people are scalping, which defeats the purpose of making things more accessible because they're making it more accessible for a very limited group of people. So let's do mystery boxes where I would email all these different designers that usually wouldn't get their games outside of Japan or outside of Korea. And my partner at travelgames.co.uk, who were coming into this, like we're doing a partnership doing this, did the same thing. And now we have all these different games that we're just going to send out to people. And it not only includes these like really rare games that maybe sold out at Tokyo Game Market that we just got pre-order copies of, but it also includes these games from completely unknown designers and allows them to get their games to people who normally would have never heard of it before. And I translated the rules for them for free. And it's just kind of this thing of like, all right, you know what? We're bringing people Japanese games. Like we're bringing the people to Japan, but we're also bringing Japan to the people. And so I don't think we're doing anything innovative per se, because we're not really the best, I don't think, at anything, which is an awful, again, awful tagline for everything. But I really want to, like, we really want to be, I keep saying I don't know why, but we really want to be these kind of people that are like, when I think of almost like who I can go to kind of learn about something new, then I can go to that. And you know what? They're like so down to earth and so approachable because they're not like doing tons and tons of things that I can like ask them questions. I can like argue with them a little bit if I disagree about something, or where can I find this? Like, I really want this game, but like it's so expensive. Do you have any kind of tips as to how to even go shopping in Japan? I don't speak Japanese. What should I do? That kind of thing. So, and I think that like your show is kind of given a kind of similar perspective of really like bringing these topics and really giving a personality to some really difficult questions and kind of giving a voice to these things that I think not everybody thinks about because we're like so busy playing the games, but we miss some of the aspects that are with them. And so I think that like your podcast is also really cool in that way.
Well, I appreciate that. I think the what you're mentioning with the difficult questions is just the way that I phrase them. But no. In all
That
serious,
explains why I've gotten some easy questions.
I don't think so. I mean,
Kidding.
me trying to get to like the 3-time innovation question was meant to be like 3 separate ones, and then it was 1, and then it was 2. I don't know. It is what it is. But end of the day, I like exploring board games. I like exploring different mediums in general. I think you mentioned the Dan Thoreau episode. I am a very self-proclaimed non-expert in many different fields. Like I no claim on expertise in anything, but I like to. I mean, I love games, but even if I'm not in like a period of watching like a ton of like movies, maybe as much as I used to, or even reading or whatever it is, like at any particular time, like I still want to like kind of be have like access to them, or at least be thinking about them, and then also thinking about them in the realm of like board games and in conversation with them too. Just I don't know. Long story short, it lets me talk about anything, and it lets me talk to people that like or want to talk about it with me, or are tricked into talking about it with me.
But it's kind of a fun thing though too. It's just like constantly learning, constantly exploring, asking people who know more than you about a topic. It's just like that's really fun.
And again, yeah, I mean, like, and hearing your vision for your your like what you're doing with the Tokyo Game Market box, and doing like what you're doing with the channel and the podcast, and just like hearing other people's different stories too, like no matter like what sphere of board games that they're in, is like to me just like an extra like level that I love. Like I love like the personal stories behind some of the designers' games, and I also love the fact that there are going to be people that are receiving these games from you, and you said Ben from Travel Games that UK. I'll put the link
Yeah.
in.
Ben from travelgames.co.uk. Yeah, it's a long it's a
I'll
long thing.
insert that link so people can see that too. But like, I mean, they're going to get something that was, like designed, translated, packaged, and I mean, it just has like an extra layer, and I think that adds to the story, like whether or not, and I think people getting the games from you would like understand that too. But just having these layers, I don't know. I think it's fun. That's why I'm doing it, I guess.
I have to tell, like it's a kind of like cute thing that when I was emailing some of the designers, like these smaller designers, they would be so humble about like their games. Like, what you want my game? Do you want me to give you the email for like Oink? Because they have like good games. I'm like, no. I want your game. Stop being like this. Give me 30 of your game. And they'll be like, okay, is there anything else that you want? I'm like, also send me a picture so I can put you so that people can learn about things. So we actually have pictures of some of the designers who felt comfortable. Some of them didn't feel comfortable, but we actually have pictures of like some of them included thank you notes for all the things because it like meant that much to them that people are like trying their game. They were like, I never thought that I would get to go to like my game would be in the US or the UK. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic, and that's what I mentioned. You were being like them in this interview and in your response too. I think that is something that not everybody's doing. That level of like care in trying something new, and well, I wanted to hear more about it, and I'm glad that I was able to. So.
Well, I can't believe you invited me onto the podcast, but I'm incredibly appreciative. It's been so much fun talking to you.
Yeah, well, you don't get to escape without the final question though.
Ah, no. I'm
I know,
kidding.
no, I know that this is like a lot of talk about so many different things, and
No,
I
I told
try
you
to.
I'm an extrovert. Talking
Okay,
energizes me, so I'm good.
good. And I know you got the pre-show caffeine in, so we'll get to finish strong. I think. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming out and talking. So I'll give you the thank you before you get the final question anyway. Then I'll thank you after. Midwestern hospitality there.
Oh, sure, yeah. You know it.
But so yeah, this is like the text that has been kind of like stuck on your mind, something you've been thinking about, that you've been reading, watching, playing, listening to, what have you.
A text?
A text, any text. You can think about anything that you've been engaged with that you're like, people should listen to this. People should watch this. People should play
Oh
this.
man, I actually had one. Oh my goodness. Hold on, I have to pull it up. Because I literally was just mentioning this to one of my students. Oh, you know what it was? Um, I will be embarrassed if I don't get this like right on. So I this actually has to do really well with the community aspect of it because for some reason lately I've been thinking of Zelda. Specifically, that it's dangerous to go alone. And I think a lot of what I've been trying to do lately, not in terms of the Board Game Dojo, but like in my personal life, is trying to do everything myself, trying to take on all the pressure myself. And then learning, now that I've been around the sun 29 times, it's like I think I'm finally learning to rely on other people for things and to really get other people's advice and expertise on things, that nobody expects you to know everything. Nobody expects you to be an expert in everything. I think it was in Dale Carnegie's book, like How to Make Friends. I don't remember the title of it. I should definitely know the title of it because that'll make me sound a lot smarter. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Of like, hey, if you actually ask people for advice, they will like you better. And it's like, well, actually, like, I feel like I'm trying to just build relationships in general now, and I want that to be a two-way street. Like, if I ask them for help, then actually they're asking me for help. That's one of the things that like Ben from travelgames.co.uk, that's one of the reasons that him and I like started working together, is because we needed each other's help for something. And then we needed each other's help again. And then we were just like, actually, you know what? Let's just like work on this new project that we had an idea for. And so I think that that's it. It's dangerous to go alone, which is like such a nerdy thing to be like. That's a nerdy text, but there it is.
Hey, well, not just a game, not just a message from the text, but also a nice philosophical message to wrap us up with. Wow.
That's the intertextual cardboard experience.
This was it. This was the I don't think it has a the in the title. I know it doesn't have a the in the title, but nonetheless, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'll make sure that I link your YouTube. I'll link your podcast. I'll link. So sorry, just the Tokyo Game Market box is still available.
They're going on sale. I don't know when you're posting this, but they go on sale at 6 p.m. UK time on Friday, January 26th.
Okay. Well, this is going to be not in time for that. So if there are any boxes available after the pack when this gets posted early next week.
Don't worry too much because you can put on that you're interested in a new box, and we might be doing a second round of them if we get enough requests.
Okay.
So put in your thing. If we're sold out, like put in a request because that tells us that like it's actually worth doing round 2.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure that it's been a lot of work. Like I can't even imagine that process, but I think it's going to be fun for you to like see those out in the world and seeing all these other games, which is what you're trying to do in the first place, get into more people's hands, and they'll just be like a super rewarding experience.
Yeah, I hope so.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. I'll like I said, I'll make sure that all that is available to anybody, and I think it's neat too that hopefully even further increased interest in that will keep this a thing to come for some time.
Thank you so much. ありがとうございました. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute blast.
Perfect.
And I think because I came on, you have to actually let me win innovation.
Well, we'll play it out. We'll see.
Okay.
I'll put in.
I have a chance.
You have a chance. Show notes will say the final score. All right.
Oh boy.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.
Intertextual Cardboard Experience, the most eclectic podcast about board games and any other text that they connect to. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time here. Any further support, such as sharing the show with friends, following the page's socials in the episode description, writing a review, filling out the feedback form, or doing anything else you can think of, is greatly appreciated. Keep playing, watching, reading, listening, experiencing.